Okay, well, we can get started. Welcome everybody for joining our third webinar. Hopefully you're able to catch the live recording of our first one or saw a recording of it on our Vimeo and watch the follow-up webinar that we filmed and put up online. Now this second one, we will go through different types of user cases and customer situations and discuss the stakeholders that are actually involved in different automation projects. So now I'll just like to pass it on to our CTO, Per Augustin, and he'll take us through the rest of the presentation. And we'll save all questions for the end.
Thank you, Luke. So let's get started on this webinar. So this is the third webinar that we have in this series of presentations. And we started out with the eQart story, and we had a pre-recorded webinar about the product. And today we will talk about user cases. So we will start with discussing, okay, what is a user case? How can we define it? And we can also look into user cases for the eQart. What is a good user case for the eQart, and so on. So first, I would like to make a short summary of what we said in the previous webinars, and this is a brief description of the FlexQube as a company. We have delivered 25,000 cards to a value of 250 million SEK since we started the company in 2010. We have configured about 2,500 solutions, and they are available in our solutions library. When it comes to our customers, we have 600 customers globally that we aim to make world leaders in intralogistics. We have sold to more than 30 countries, and we have average growth of 45% every year. We have one manufacturing center in Europe, and we have one manufacturing and assembly center in the United States outside Atlanta. And we have been listed on Nasdaq First North since end of 2017. So what we do is that we build customized cards with standardized Lego, or you can see it like Lego blocks. And this is one example where we have made a customized card for a windshield for a bus, for example. And to the right, you can see a customized card for some totes and boxes. So this is describing the possibilities with the FlexQube concept. And today we will discuss the eQart, and that is our entry into the automation market. So what we actually do here is that we add what we call smart modules to our standard FlexQube concept. We add brain, we add sensors, motors, and so on. And by doing this, we make our solutions self-driving. And I showed this during the last presentation, and it's about the user case. And what we are stating here that no product is best in doing everything, but they are always best in something. And this is the key about user cases, that you need to find the perfect match of product properties and the user need. So we have tried to structure a little bit how we can define a user case. And what is then a user case? We can say that it is a set of functions that creates a clear value for one or several users. And the functions, they are enabled by a solution or a product. So you can see it like these 4 steps. So first we have to define who are the users and what values are important for the users. And the third step is, okay, what functions do we need to fulfill those values? And the last step is to find a product that will fulfill these functions. And this is some simple examples how you can define a user case. So in this case, we have a driver, and the value for this driver is to feel some thrill and excitement. And of course, then we need to find functions like high top speed and responsive steering. And yeah, the product that can achieve that is of course a sports car. But if we look at another example where we have drivers and passengers as the users, but they are looking into totally different values like comfort and a lot of space, then we must look into different functions like, okay, how many seats do we have? How large is the entry? And how much luggage space do we have? And then we end up with a solution like a family van. This is another example of speakers. So if we have a listener that values easy installation and easy use, that can be achieved with functions like, okay, the speaker should be small, it shouldn't be cables, and it should be plug and play. And the solution or product for that could, for example, be a Sonos speaker. And on the other hand, we have another user. He wants to listen to music as well, but he has completely different values and want to experience the best possible sound. So in this case, the sound quality is the most important. And that brings functions like housing and powerful speakers. So this is some examples to exemplify how we can work with user cases. And I think one mistake that we see in projects is that if you try to add too many values, it will be a pretty big compromise. So the key is to really find the values that are important for the project. And this is a challenge for industrial projects because we have many different users and we have many different values that we need to consider. So that is more complex compared to a consumer product. So we will go through the users, the values, the functions, and the solution from an automation perspective. And we will start with the users. If we look at this from the top, we can see the business segments as different users. So we have the warehouse where we move totes, boxes, and pallets, and so on. We have a manufacturing where we use automation to move material kits, sub-assemblies, and so on. We have distribution focusing more on parcels and picking racks where you load all the items before they are shipped. We are using automation in the process industry to move raw material, fluids, and finished products. We also see that automation is increasing in airports, for example, to move luggage carts and also food trolleys and so on. And also with the hospital, material robots are used to move equipment, medicine, food, and so on. So this is the top users. And then if we have a look at a lower level, we have users by the stakeholders. So that could, for example, be the assembler putting the product together. It can be the material picker that loads parts onto the automation robot. It can be operators that are responsible for running the machines. Logistic engineer, he is doing all the planning of the flow and so on. So there is a lot of different stakeholders with direct or indirect contact with the actual solution. So we have a lot of users, and then the question is, okay, what values are important for those users? We have one obvious value when it comes to automation, and that is, of course, to have some kind of return on invest. If we look at the labor cost, that is constantly increasing, and the cost for automation is constantly decreasing. So the bigger gap that we have between those two, the better chance we have to have a really good payoff time for our investment in automation. But this is not everything, so we need to consider different values as well. For example, safety is very important in automation project. Capacity, what we want to achieve in terms of capacity, efficiency, and also flexibility. Maybe we want the assembly lines or the warehouse to be more flexible in terms of the layout or the ability to reconfigure the equipment. Ergonomics, working environment, but also strategy, that there is a company strategy that it should be forklift free, for example. So these are the most common values that we discuss in automation projects. And of course, if we break down these and look at the users, they have a lot of opinions about what is valuable for them. So for example, the assembler, he wants to pick the parts in an ergonomic height. We have the material picker that wants to get close to the robot when they are loading the parts, for example. We have a logistic engineer, they want to reduce the man hours and make the transport more efficient. Maintenance engineer, yeah, he wants, of course, to have a quick and easy repair of the product. We also have the union. We should not forget about those, to have everyone on board when it comes to those kind of questions. We have also a purchaser that want a clear material for decision of the purchase. We have local management, and maybe they have the aim to be a reference within the complete company to be best in automation. So it can be very different type of values that are gathered in the user cases. And this is a real challenge, especially for industrial projects, because what we can see is that there is very easy a lot of required user values that are put into the projects, and it's a risk that we will have this terrain Ferrari again, because we have so many values that we need to achieve or that we need to fulfill, that the outcome of the solution will be a big compromise. So the key in the projects is to really focus on some specific values, that there is top 3 or top 5 values selected that the project should achieve, and then there's also much better possibilities to find a good solution. So then next step is the functions, and the mean of the functions is to fulfill the values. So we'll implement different functions in order to achieve the values. And from a principal perspective, this is a simple sketch, and this is the core function of automation is that you put in parts in one end, and on the other end you will have the delivered parts. So you can see the automation solution as a black box. But of course, inside this black box, you need a lot of functions in order to fulfill this mission in the most efficient way that meets the values that we have defined. So this is the most relevant functions when it comes to logistics automation. So it's about speed, for example. It's about load capacity, size flexibility, top structure flexibility, if you can have different top structures like customized for different material kits and so on. So there is many different functions, and the key here is to find and decide on the functions that gives the best value that we have defined. And then we have the solutions, and they are the product that will fulfill the functions. And we went through those in the first webinar. So we have material handling providers. They are original, like forklifts and tuggers that are equipped with technology in order to make them self-driving. We have the traditional AGV companies that makes AGVs following magnetic path and carrying carts around. We have the AMR, autonomous mobile robots, and they are focusing on pallet movements with a very high technology level with natural navigation and so on. And then we have what we call motorized carts, which is the eQart segment, where you take industrial carts and equip them with motors and sensors and so on. And this is also from the first webinar where we are comparing the eQart with the rest of the solutions. And we are looking at two axes. One axle is the size, if we carry around standard size items or we need some customized size. And we look at the top structure if it's like a standard pallet or if it requires some more customized top structure. So the key area for the eQart where we bring new value is where we need a customized size and also some kind of customized top structure. So this is the eQart, and now we will see what is the best use case for the eQart. As you can see on the picture here, it is modular, so we can create any type of size and function based on the same smart modules. So that is the key behind the eQart. And we have said that we are targeting, first of all, warehouse customers or warehouse users, manufacturing users, and distribution users, because this is where we see the greatest need for the type of flexibility that the eQart offers. And I think manufacturing is the area where you need the most flexibility of those. And that is based on that you create a lot of material kits, you have sub-assemblies, and you have another level of complexity. So this three is our targeting users. We are focusing on user cases where there is a need for big flexibility. And that is in terms of size flexibility, where you can range from small up to large. You have flexibility in terms of application, standalone, tow application, and mother-daughter. And we are also targeting customer or user cases where we can customize different top structures like shelves, raised platforms, and kit racks and so on. This is also a very important slide because if you look at the automation process, you can have two main categories. You can decide to use dedicated flows. So that means that you focus on one process at a time. So you make one automation setup for the red loop, you make one for the yellow and one for the blue and so on. And the benefit with that is that you can keep it more simple. You can customize each eQart for each use case. And there is also easier to calculate the return on invest because you have a more isolated project. Another strategy is to have a general use case, and that is when you buy AGV or robot that you want to serve a lot of different processes. And that tends to be very complex because, of course, you have more users and you need to fulfill more values. And it tends to be a lot more investigation as well when you go for the general use case. So the target user case for eQart is to go for the dedicated use. This slide shows our approach to automation level. So we have one axle with cost and complexity, and we have one axle of level of automation. And we have said that we aim to automate up to 80% because we still want to be flexible. We believe that if you want to automate from 80 up to 100%, that will add a lot of cost and complexity to the project. So what we see is that we still want to have some human involvement in the process in order to simplify the implementation and keep the flexibility high. We have also said that we want to be affordable alternative. And if we look at the user cases that we have calculated on so far, most of the return on invest times are around 6 months, which is very good. And of course, that is enabled by the affordable price that we have achieved on the eQart. So affordable price, flexibility, and easy of use is also focused for the user cases. And there is clear pricing options. So there is one option to buy and one option to rent. So we will go through some real user cases. And this is a transport of machine part. So in this case, the value from the users was that they want to make the transport more efficient. These parts were moved by hand, and they wanted to do it more efficient. So the function for that is to implement some kind of motorized cart. And one other important value was that they wanted to have an easy loading and unloading of the work pieces. So you can see the fixtures that are on the top here in order to place these parts. So this is an A to B dedicated use where you move this between a machining center and the quality station back and forth. This is another user case, and the value here is that the user already have existing carts, and in that case we can offer to make a mother-daughter solution. That means that the daughter can move inside the eQart, and by doing that we create a lot of value for this customer because they don't need to buy or design new carts. One other value that was expected was to have an easy and quick connection to the mother, and that is done with the magnetic locking in this case. This is another use case. We have a round loop and we pick up pallets from the picking area and then we bring them to the shipping area. So it's a round loop with 5 pick-up stations, and you have one station where you leave the pallet to the shipping. And the main value here is to reduce the forklift traffic. So then the eQart will do the move automatic, and it's equipped with rollers on top in order to fulfill a safe movement of the transfer. This is another use case. So it's for a customer that make cabs. They assemble the cab on this blue structure, and at the end of the assembly line, they want to move the empty cab dolly back to the start of the assembly line. And that was done with forklift. So the value here is, of course, to make that more efficient. And one other important aspect was to connect and disconnect quickly to this dolly. So it is equipped with a tow bar that you attach to this fixture, and it takes the dolly back to the start of the assembly line. This is another user example as well, where we prepare welded kits. So in this case, they want to reduce forklift traffic as well, and they want to have a really good material presentation for the operators. So you have 3 kit stations where you prepare all the material on the cart, and then the eQart goes to one of the 3 welding stations where they weld the parts together, and then it goes back to the kit stations. It's a customized size, 1400 times 910 millimeters. This is a bit similar user case where you have a round loop with the kitting stations. You have supermarket 1 to 4 where you load parts on this eQart, and then you make assembly on 4 stations. So this is replacing manual movement between assembly stations. That's it for this webinar. Is there any questions?
If you have any questions, you can just fill it out into the Q&A section that's located at the bottom there. Doesn't seem like there's too many questions today, Pat.
Okay. Everything is clear now?
No, we have one question now just coming in from Christina. How do they know if their user case is approved from FlexQube's end, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that's a part of the project process. So we will review the requirement and the values and the functions of each use case. So that's a part of creating the design that we will evaluate based on different aspects.
We have another question here from an anonymous attendee, and they're asking what type of battery do we use in the eQart?
We are using lithium-ion battery. It's a 60 amp hour, so it will last for around 8 hours.
No more questions? They just followed up. Did you say lithium, Pat? Yeah.
Yeah.
That is correct. It is a lithium.
Lithium-ion battery.
I have another question here from Isolano. What is the maintenance on the eQart?
Yeah, it's not very much maintenance. We are using brushless motors, so it's more or less about cleaning, look after the safety scanners, look after the mechanical design and so on, check for loose bolts on yearly basis, I would say.
And we have another question here from a person called User. They're asking about what's the maximum speed with payload?
The maximum speed is 0.7 meters per second with payload in automatic drive.
Was there any other looming questions there? We have another question here from an anonymous attendee. What would you consider a heavy use application? 1,000 hours runtime? Question mark.
I'm not sure if I fully understand the question, but we are working with projects where the eQart is in constant move. So that will be, yeah, so let's say roughly 20 hours every day. That's a heavy use case, I would say. Then it's working in 3 shifts.
Okay. Okay. We got a reaction there. Wow, that's pretty heavy use. Very good from the anonymous attendee. Okay, so there's no more follow-up questions. We have another one from Seller. What's the product sensitivity to environment?
Yeah, that depends on what type of environment we are talking about, but it's made for industrial use. So yeah, it can run on concrete floor and pretty tough environments like that. I'm not sure if I completely understood.
No, but it's not intended for outdoor use, correct?
No, exactly. It's intended for indoor use in manufacturing and distribution.
We followed up there with dust and floor types.
So, yeah. When it comes to the navigation, it follows color. So if it's too much dust, of course, and it doesn't see the color, there might be some interference, but most of the cases, it can also follow the contour. So it's not, yeah, it's from case to case, of course, but it's constantly improving also the line flow.
We have another question here from a user just asking if we'll be able to travel on slopes.
It's very limited abilities to travel on slopes. You can do some customized ramps to enable that, but in general, it's designed for a flat surface use cases.
Okay, was there any other questions? Okay, but if you have any other following questions, you can always visit our website, and you can also email to eQart with a Q at flexcube.com. And we will get back to you guys with the following webinar date coming up in the next few weeks. Thank you guys for coming and joining your afternoon with us or your morning.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.